All right, so in this podcast, I'm going to actually dive into a couple of questions I got from some subscribers in regards to their Etsy store. They just recently opened an Etsy shop, and they had a couple of questions about some legalities of selling on Etsy, as well as some potential tax ramifications from the income on Etsy. They're relatively new at Etsy as well. Of course, they just opened it up, and they had emailed me. The question was, do I need a license, Damien, to sell on Etsy? So do I need a license to sell on Etsy? And the other one was, do I have to report Etsy income? So those are some actually really great questions, and actually you want to make sure that you listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you, because some cases, if you don't actually report the income that you're making online as a business, you can get into a little bit of trouble, to say the least. So the first question is, do I need a license to sell on Etsy? Now, Etsy itself does not require a specific license, but do not take selling online as a hobby or a side business. Why? Because these platforms will actually send you a form, a report stating how much income you have made. And it's up to you to make sure that you keep track of the amount of products that you sell, the amount of also what your expenditures are and your expenses, because the difference between the two is obviously known as profit. And if you are making a profit online, you are going to be taxed on that income. So it's super important if you're buying ingredients, let's say to create a product or even a baked good or something like that, and you're doing baked goods or food, or if you're buying ingredients or other materials to create a finalized product like shirts or hats or whatever it may be sure that you keep track of all of your expenses. Be sure to keep track of all of your sales. And the difference between the two, obviously very simplistically putting it, is your profit. And yes, it is taxable. So the license part of it, no, you don't necessarily need one. But if you're in the city or county and you're operating a business out of your home and somehow they find out about it and you're not licensed as a business, or you may potentially not have yourself incorporated or even an EIN, which I'm going to go through each and every single one of these things, you could have the potential to be very much in trouble for operating a business and not reporting it or having a license. So number one, a business license. Now, Damien, does everyone require that, like Etsy or eBay and anything? The platforms are not in a position to require these things, but they do suggest that if you're operating a business, you need to check with the city and county you live in that you can get a home-based business license. Yes, if you're operating a home-based business, you can still get a license to operate that business if that happens to be where you're operating it from. Now, business licenses can range anywhere from about $100 to maybe $150 at the most. Some of them are a lot even less than that. They're renewed every year, so it's an annual thing you have to do. And then the other thing you need to check into is an EIN. This is an employer identification number. Why would I need that, and what is it? Well, for tax purposes, when you're dealing with the IRS and you have an accountant handle your taxes, and they're going to handle all of the income, they're going to see what you're making. Having an EIN is an employer identification number. It is a number that distinguishes your business and allows the IRS to say, hey, Damien's selling t-shirts and hats on Etsy, so this is his EIN. We can see that there's income coming in from that source. So having an EIN for your business is definitely something you need to look into. The other thing that you need to look into, and believe it or not, even whether you're selling food products or you're selling any other type of item, is insurance. You need to have business insurance. Potentially, if someone hurts themselves using one of your products, if one of your products breaks and somebody gets hurt and you don't have insurance, you're not incorporated, they can sue you personally if you don't have a business. So that is something you definitely need to be aware of, and you should definitely look into, because having insurance is going to be that blanket, that cushion that you would need to make sure that you don't lose your house and everything else. So get yourself some form of small business insurance. Okay, that's going to vary, of course, on the price depending on the type of business, what you're selling, and a whole bunch of other factors. But in general, insurance is a good thing to have, obviously, for your business. Now, Damien, should I incorporate? Do I have to create an LLC or a C Corp or S Corp, or do I have to create some type of business entity, as it's known? Well, a lot of places, again, platforms will not enforce the fact that you have to have that, but your city and county and state definitely need to make sure that you're operating a business. So creating an LLC, which is a limited liability corporation, is definitely a good thing to have and good thing to do when you're, again, operating a business. If you're doing this as a hobby, in some cases, depending on what you're selling, you're taking a big risk. To minimize this risk, limit the amount of risk, you need to create an LLC. It's not very expensive. As a matter of fact, there's a company that we worked with. We did ours through inkfile.com. You can check down below this video, actually, in the description, there's a link for Inkfile. You can look at Inkfile. You can do this online in about 10 or 15 minutes. But Inkfile is actually a great website to do it in. There's also Ink Authority. There's a variety of online places where you can actually do this in a matter of minutes. But it's something I highly recommend you do. Don't take a business as a hobby. If you're doing selling a few things on eBay here and there, and you're making like $100 a year or $200 a year, Again, I personally don't recommend operating any business online without it being a business, but that is up to you. But of course, again, creating these LLCs, having insurance, EINs, you're really following the guidelines to be a legitimate business, and you definitely need to look into it. Now, next up is sales tax. So if you're selling a product online, and let's just say you lived in Florida, and you sold a product to somebody in Florida, you need to be collecting sales tax and remit that, also known as submitting it, to the state of Florida. You need to get a sales tax ID so you can send them the taxes. Florida's gonna say, Damien, that's great. You're doing $100,000 a year. Have you collected taxes on your sales? You need to send that taxes to us. So they'll actually set you up on a schedule where you can do this online too, and you submit that to the state, either 3 months, 6 months, or every 12 months, okay? So it's quarterly, half a year, or annually, okay? So you need to be aware of that too. Sales tax is something that you have to remit or send to the state as you collect it, okay? So if you're gonna be online, the question again back to, do I need a license to sell on Etsy? You really don't. But technically, I would highly recommend for legal purposes, you protect yourself. Just use common sense. You're running a business. Do that, okay? Do you have to report do I have to report my Etsy income? Yes, you do. Because what Etsy's gonna do is they're going to send you documentation saying, hey, Damien sold $60,000 worth of stuff on Etsy this year. Okay, so the IRS is gonna be aware of that, and they're gonna be like, okay, well, where's that? Why are you not writing that down on your taxes? Don't do that. Don't get in trouble. Just use your common sense. You're making money. You have an amount of money that you're spending for the product. You're going to sell it at a certain price. The difference between the two is known, obviously, as profit. Let's just break this down simple. You make a profit, you have to pay taxes on it. So that's two great questions. Thank you guys very much for sending those in. I'm hoping this is clarifying it for everybody who's watching this video. And if you have someone who could benefit from this video, please send them my video. If you know a friend or a cousin or somebody who's selling on Etsy, let them take a look at it and check the resources down below in the description too. We always have a ton of them, and I'll upload this onto our podcast as always. Our podcast links as well are down below in the YouTube description. I'll see you guys on our next video.